Absolutely. So this is actually a very current story. It's actually still, we don't know what the end is yet. But I am currently working with a team at the center here to implement significant changes to the process that the center uses to manage itself. So this is a kind of a different sort of project that I'm used to working on. I usually do technical projects, of course. And I knew that I had a really broad and diverse set of stakeholders for this particular project. You know, technical projects, you can convince yourself that everybody's an engineer and I'm an engineer and I know how to talk to engineers. So you can fool yourself into thinking that, you know, all engineers have the same perspective and the same concerns. So this project was kind of a blessing in that it was really easy to tell that my stakeholder set was diverse and I was going to have to communicate really carefully and really consciously. Because in this project, we're touching almost everybody in the center, and we're poking a little bit at power structures, right? We're changing power structures like it's personal for people. So I've had to really be conscious about messaging. I've had to tailor those messages so that each group, each subgroup, and many individuals can not only grasp our intent, but hear their concerns in our communication. So we have to not only tailor messages for different groups, but then we have to be consistent enough that nobody thinks we're telling one group one thing and another group something else, right? So one of the things that's been really helpful there is using pictures and graphics. I've done that for a while in presentations to kind of pull that thread through a presentation. You pick a graphic that represents a concept and pull that thread through a presentation. And that's been very helpful in crafting presentations, particularly because we can just use a graphic and sort of make sure that we touch on everybody's concerns without putting a bunch of words on a chart. The other thing that's been a little bit surprising, I think, and also extremely cool, is that I've not used a graphic really for goals and objectives before, and I had a word chart that was talking about why we wanted to change the governance process, what we thought we would get out of it, and I sent that to a graphic artist to ask if she could kind of create a poster, which she did, and it's so eye-catching, and it just kind of gets in your brain somehow so that you can really, you know, retain why we're trying to do this. And I find myself using it when I have a bad day, and I'm like, why am I putting myself through this? I look at the graphic, right, and it's very clear. Those, you know, we're trying to get to transparency, to inclusiveness, to diversity, all those things, and I, you know, it just resets my mindset. And so I use that graphic exclusively to talk about goals and objectives for this particular project. I've never really had a graphic before for that, and it's really kind of cool. I will say that this project has really, I think, changed for good forever the way that I approach communication. That really, the little bit of effort to think really consciously about the way I'm communicating has paid off big time. So a little bit of effort and a pretty big payout. And I hope that in the future when I work a technical project that I approach my communication as consciously as I have with this project. I mean, how do you learn anything? You practice. You talk to other people who are good at it, and you watch other people that are good and bad at it with a critical eye, right? So you kind of watch people to see, well, why is that working? Why am I relating to that communication? What's working about that and what's not working about that? I think for me, my communication journey really kind of started to pay off well when I took up some courses and I started to put stuff together, right? So you can take presentation courses and negotiation courses and critical communication courses, and when you do enough of that, you start to see, oh, first of all, this is actually a skill I can learn, not just like some innate talent that some people are born with. And second, you start to be able to see, that other people are manipulating you through their communication, and you can do that too. Um, the one other thing that's really been big change for me is I'm a big introvert, and sort of being aware of where my energy is, where it's coming from, and where it's going has really helped me manage that. And so I don't kind of lose steam in the middle of a communication anymore, because I can manage my energy and I still have the ability to communicate, halfway through the presentation or the exchange. So a few things come to mind. First, speaking is important, and listening is at least as important. So I cannot tailor a message for individual groups if I haven't listened to them a little bit and understood where their concerns are. I find that always building in listening times and feedback times into any kind of communication is really helpful. It really helps you, sort of know where to go next, right? And so that's related to the next idea, which is, I think a lot of people approach communication with what they need to say, and that's a knowledge transfer. And optimal communication is a knowledge exchange. So when you build that listening time in, you get something back for what you give. Related to that, every time you have a conversation, you have the opportunity to build trust. And trust is the grease that makes this whole machine work, right? So if discipline engineers don't trust the systems engineer, we're not going to get a whole lot of systems engineering done, right? So trust is really important to build, and every time you communicate, you have that opportunity to build trust, to speak with integrity, to demonstrate that you care about other people's concerns, and to really, build relationships that will help you get done what you want and need to get done. The last thing is about preparation. So I think most engineers think that preparing for a conversation is just getting up the courage to talk to another human being and look them in the eyes instead of, at their shoes. And that's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So especially when you only have one chance to communicate, or when it's really an important communication, you don't want to get it wrong, you need to understand where it's going to go. So when I first became a supervisor, I had to have a really tough conversation with an employee, and I actually found a subject matter expert in human beings, a psychologist, and she helped me prepare for that conversation by role-playing it, and she was really good at it. She was like so amazing at being a really difficult employee, and she really prepared me for any direction that conversation could have gone. And now that I've had some practice like that, when I prepare for a conversation, especially when I'm teaching or when it's a really tough conversation, I really need to get, I have somewhere I need to get to in that conversation, my preparation looks like a flowchart because I'm an engineer. So I say, if I say this, what are the reactions that people could have to that? And where do I need to go next? So if I say this and the reaction is that, we're going to go over there. And if the reaction is different, we're going to go over here. And I actually end up with a flowchart that sort of broadens out in the middle and then comes back to a point at the bottom so that I can always get to where I need to go. So when I talk to engineers that are interested in systems engineering, usually the kind of advice I give them is first master your discipline, because that's really important. It helps you build your engineering judgment muscles. It helps you understand when people are, have brought analysis and when they haven't. It helps you sift opinion from engineering reality. Practice systems thinking. So either work on a team where you are a little bit out of your discipline, or you're working with cross-disciplinary kind of team, and volunteer to do something that's completely out of your discipline so that you can understand what other disciplines have to do and what their perspectives are. And then build your leadership skills, because systems engineering is pretty much leadership. You almost always have to lead a bunch of people through some kind of process to get to where you all are trying to go. And so building your leadership skills is really essential for a good systems engineer.